Let's move on to responding to some critics. It's interesting. I see a lot of these posts on Facebook again, perhaps because I post about personal finance, credit cards, and more. And through many sources come Dave Ramsey and his co hosts. This one was interesting from George Kamel, Kamel. It seems like he's trying to make you feel guilty about miles and points. So when the base arguments fail, when what they're saying really doesn't make sense, it's an appeal to emotion, it's trying to shame you. They're using these shaming tactics here. This is what he says. So while you're flexing that free flight, someone else is drowning in debt to fund it. They convinced you're winning so you wouldn't notice you're being used. And that, friends, is how they afford to sponsor the Taylor Swift tour while many can't afford a ticket.
That is just a very interesting argument to me because here's the thing. Credit cards were built so that way you could purchase items when you didn't have the cash on. Sometimes you need to purchase a meal and you might not have cash. You might be traveling for work. And as part of that way of paying for that, they make money in one of two ways. One, on interest, which you definitely don't want to pay. I think I've accidentally paid like $10 on interest once on a card. Out of all my years, I think I've only paid interest once, and it was a complete accident. It was $10. But then also on interchange fees. This is the fee that a vendor will pay to pay for access to actually accept that card. And that's what's paying for our points and miles. It's not the interest. The interest is just gravy for the banks. What pays for our points and miles are those interchange fees. Let's say they charge 3% interchange fee and they rebate back 2% to us. It is what it is. I just think it's wild to assume because I fly for free, it's because of someone else making the choice to go into debt.
And just because others are not making great financial decisions, does that mean that we should just sit home and not take these flights? Because we can use credit responsibly, they can't. So therefore, we just shouldn't engage at all, cancel everything, pay full price for travel. That doesn't make sense to me.
No, it doesn't make sense to me either because I want to see the world and I'm responsible with my credit. And so I'm responsible with my finances. I have the means. I've been blessed with having a great paying job where I don't have to worry about going into debt. I'm just going to take that rebate and I'm going to run with it. I don't spend more than if I spent everything in cash. It's just I'm getting something back in return for what I'm going to spend already.
Yes, it's this constant thing they take is that because some people misuse something that it's all bad. And I wonder how far they would extend that. Some people overeat at buffets. So Justin, you should never go to a buffet because some people eat too much and maybe have some eating problems. Or some people drink alcohol too much and become violent. So you should never even drink a glass of wine. I don't think they're going to apply that kind of logic or reasoning globally.
I don't think there's any reason to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just because it's too much of anything can be bad. You could drink too much milk and get sick, but that doesn't mean milk is bad for you.
I'm a fan of birds, and we both take joy in the birds aren't real, like parody movement. And some people might be bird watchers and maybe spend too much time bird watching, and that could be a bad thing. But because some people watch birds too much, or maybe they're obsessed, people like that word obsessed, maybe that just because some people do something too much doesn't mean that we can't have a hobby, be responsible, and be disciplined.
Yeah, I think it's all about just not going too hard into something where it consumes you in a negative way.
He brings Taylor Swift into it, which is funny. This is how they afford to sponsor the Taylor Swift tour. So is that really Taylor Swift is completely funded by people paying credit card interest? I can't imagine that to be true.
I'm not someone with a massive following, but I don't think insulting Taylor Swift is the way to increase your following with people.
And many people in Miles and Points, perhaps ironically, flew international to see Taylor Swift because they recognized that the price of tickets in the US were quite high. I've had podcast guests on before. Oh, I flew to Europe to see Taylor Swift and the tickets were a lot cheaper.
I think Ariana flew out to Singapore to see Taylor Swift.
Yeah, and on Miles and Points too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it makes you do that. I flew to London to see one of my favorite bands. Small band based in the US. They played in a concert hall that held like 2,000, 2,500, but I wouldn't have traded it for the world.
Nice. So do you feel manipulated or used? He says they convinced you you're winning so you wouldn't notice you're being used.
But it doesn't matter whether you use cash or credit cards. It's the budget that's going to cause you to get financially further along with your investments and things like that. And I think I am winning because I use a budget very similar to what Dave Ramsey preaches. But I also use the credit card to get all the travel points and miles and have the time of my life flying to the Maldives.
And not overspending, and you're paying the balances. You're not going into debt. You're not paying massive interest. It's just not the case. But they make it to seem that's the fate for everyone.
No, it's definitely not the fate for everyone. And honestly, it's not even the fate for most people, in my opinion. Pretty much most people that I know are responsible with their credit because they realize that if you're not responsible, it's going to cost you a lot more in the long run. What's interesting too is if you actually look at credit card usage amongst younger generations, while there are some who are funding their lifestyles on the debt of a credit card, you actually find that savings are much higher amongst young people, including having less credit card debt than older generations did at back when they were younger.
All right, we'll move on to the second one. And it was a positive YouTube comment recently that said, your specialty is debunking the points and miles misconceptions. So let's continue with that. This one is from Jade Warshaw, Warshaw, who's one of the Dave Ramsey hosts. She says, it takes around 6 to 8 months for your credit score to disappear once you pay off your final debt. This means the score is zero or becomes indeterminable. And remember, a zero credit score is just as good as a high credit score. In fact, it's better because it doesn't require debt. So, is a zero credit score better than an 800 credit score?
I've never understood this about Dave Ramsey, his obsession with having a 0 credit score. So first of all, he just had his house in Nashville go on the market. Actually, not just, it was a couple years ago. It went on the market for $15 million. I think it was 15 million. It was over $10 million.
It was a mansion,
It
at
was
least a
fancy.
mansion, yes.
Oh, yeah. And it's did you really buy that without a mortgage? And who can afford a house these days without a mortgage?
He'll talk on his show that you can go into what he calls manual underwriting. And it seems like that's quite a laborious process. But even if you just use the credit responsibly and got it, what's the problem with that? But again, he's just going to argue that everybody's irresponsible with credit, which isn't true.
It's just wild to me that I guess that's one way to look at the world, but I just know most people aren't able to do things that they want to without taking on like a mortgage. Most people won't ever be able to pay for a house in cash. And there is manual underwriting. It's a lot more difficult, requires a lot more paperwork. If you can have a credit score that's over 800 and it literally costs you nothing, why wouldn't you just make it easier for yourself and have that credit score?
And she's saying here that the zero credit score doesn't require debt. And they use that quite loosely. They are going into debt. But if I'm making charges on a card, treating it like a debit card, and then I'm just paying it off, I could even do it every week, every other week. I'm not going into debt unless your definition is so loose. Oh, you owed the money for a week. You were in debt, Justin. I think it's a real bad mischaracterization from them.
I think if you look at like the technical definition of debt, then yes, but the practical definition of debt, it's not debt. Technically, it is a debt because you do owe it to the credit card company. But practically speaking, if it's no different than you would pay cash, you just get some points back in the process. That's not a debt, practically speaking. And what matters is the practical.
Yes, I can go to a dentist appointment and they'll say, oh, look, we'll do the first part of a procedure today, come back in 3 weeks. And then I'm going to have to pay them for the second part of the procedure. Am I in debt? Is that how loose they're going to make the definition? Is that really different than what we're doing with credit cards?
I would argue that if you had to pay for the entire procedure up front and you had to go back in 3 weeks, the dentist is in debt to you.
Oh,
You gave them money and they haven't given you what you paid for. They have a debt to you. But practically speaking, you have your appointment set for 3 weeks away. It's all paid for and you're going to go get it finished. And they know that. Don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. Be practical. Don't try and people have lives to live. And if we're dealing in theoreticals and not what's practically helpful for people, it doesn't help anyone.
Yeah. So once again, some bad takes from the Ramsey crowd, and some people get quite upset about this. And there were some people sending messages recently, being quite nasty. Some people posting, "Oh, are you paid off by the financial companies to say these things?" I wish. I've been promoting First National Bank of Omaha for quite a while and the MGM credit cards, but I don't get any affiliate money. This is about having conversations, having fun, teaching other people how to do this to some extent. And if I do make some money off of this, oh no, he's bad because he made some money. Is this very dissimilar to working a traditional job? This is just something I'm doing on my own terms, but they're not addressing the arguments like, oh, you're just paid off by the banks, even though it's not true.
Yeah, I haven't seen a dime from a bank other than I haven't seen a dime from a bank in affiliate marketing.